Hi and welcome to this DCP Word tutorial. In today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to control multiple particle systems in Blender 2.93. Okay, let's go ahead and open up Blender. I'm using the latest version, which is 2.93. If you don't know how to install this software, I'll put a link in the YouTube description showing you how to install this software, and also a link to my playlist where you can access more Blender 3D tutorials. Let's go ahead and click General here. I'm just going to turn on screencast keys so that you can see all the key presses down here. So any keys that I press, you'll see them down here in the bottom left hand of the screen. Let's go to File, Save As. We should always save our work like usual, and we'll go to this folder on my desktop. Let's see here, and we'll just call this particles-01, and we'll click Save. And we want to get rid of this cube, so let's click on the cube and delete it. We'll get rid of this light source. We'll leave our camera. Let's just pan across to this direction, so the red line and the green line like this. And we're going to press Shift and A and insert a UV sphere. So we've got one UV sphere here, and we're going to generate particles off of this. So let's go ahead and click on this particular object, and for now we're just going to create a basic particle system. So let's click on particles, click the plus sign, and if we click the play, we're going to see some basic particles here, right? Very simple. So let's go ahead and press number one. Number one will take us into the front orthographic. We'll click on the move tool, and let's just grab this handle and drag it up a little bit. Right, so we want the particles to be sort of emitted around here, and we're going to press Control Shift and 0, and that will bring the camera to the front view. So now the camera is looking at this this content, right, all these particles from here. Let's just drag it a little bit higher so it's out of the camera view, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and drag to, let's see, hold down the Shift key, hold down the Control key and drag to the side, and I want to just drag it to around this sort of position here. So I'm going to have like 3 particle systems separated out. So I want to click on this particle system, press Shift and D to duplicate, and then hit Enter. Hold down the Control key and I'm going to drag it back to the center, and I'm going to press Shift and D to duplicate again and press Enter, and hold down the Control key, drag this red arrow, and now they're kind of evenly spaced between them. If we click play, we'll see that there's 3 particle systems dropping particles into our camera view. So our camera is looking at the particle system this way, right? So we can see it from here. Okay, because we duplicated this this particle system, or we duplicated the object, and each particle system is inheriting from the first object that we copied from, right? So we're going to click on the first sphere here. Let's press number 1. That will just make life a little bit easier. We can go into the front orthographic. We'll click on the first one, and we're just going to call it particle settings left. We're going to name it particle settings left, right? Here, call it particle settings left. And we'll click on the middle one, and we're going to click on this little number here, number 3 written here. We're going to click that, and it's going to make that a unique particle system, but we're going to rename it to particle system middle. And then we'll click on the third one, and we'll click on this little number 2 here, and we're going to call this one particle settings right. So how do we know now these particle systems are behaving separately? What we can do is click on, in fact, we can leave the first one. It's got 1,000 pixels in it. We'll click on this one and we'll set it to like 10 pixels. And we'll click on this one and we'll set it to 5 pixels. In fact, let's click on the middle one, set it to something like 100, yeah? Something a little bit sensible, and set this one on the right hand side to 50. So right, the first one's got 1,000, this one's got 100, this one's got 50. So when we go back to the timeline and click play, we can see that they all have their own amount of particles being generated, right? They're separated out, 3 different ones. So now we can control how many particles are generated and what those particles look like, and we can also do quite a few other things, quite a few other interesting things. If we see any sort of like sort of issues inside Blender, we need to probably bake the particle system, because we're running 3 particles. Can you see how it's kind of glitching here a little bit? So once we bake the particle system afterwards, we won't have them sort of errors or any sort of issues. We're trying to render this all out in real time. You can see this sort of issue happens here. That will all be fixed when we bake the particle system later. Okay, so if we just pause this at some position, let's say around here, and if we were to press F12 to render, we're not going to see anything in here, right? It's going to be totally blank because our particle systems are using halos at present, and those are just like temporary particles. So if we go down to render here, you can see they're set to halos, and we don't want that. So let's click on this first one. Let's call it 01 particle emitter. Let's call it particle emitter left, and we'll copy that, and then we'll call this one particle emitter right. So I'm just copying and pasting this name in here. What's this one? This one's actually the right one, so this one should be called where is it? This one here is middle. Let's just name these quickly. It's good idea to name things. Just saves a lot of headache later. So let's just name these right or correctly, and this one can be left. So we've got three particle systems, left, middle and right, and they happen to just sit nicely anyway. Alphabetically they're sitting nicely here, and we want to create different particles for each one of these objects. So to do that, let's go ahead and click on this first object. We don't really need to click on it. We can just press Shift and A, and we're going to create another UV sphere. So here's another UV sphere, and we're going to really drag this above this particle system. So let's just grab it. Let's just press G to grab and just move it over here. So press G to grab it, then you can move it to wherever you want. I'm just going to move it just so it sits above it around this sort of position, and then we want to give it a material, right? But we need to go into our rendered view. We don't have any lighting in here at the moment, so what we want to do is emit some light from this particle. So this will become a particle, this sphere. So let's go ahead to the material. We'll click new material, and we should probably name this correctly, right? So let's call this let's just call it left 1. So it's the left particle first version, and we'll click on the principal shader here. We'll set it to a, let's see, we want to set it to an emission shader, emission. So select emission there, emission, and we're going to give it a value of, let's say 10, I think will be okay. And let's change its color to, let's say, light blue, and then let's go to our render settings here, and we're going to turn on the bloom so this particle will glow. And let's just expand that. We might bring down the radius a bit, it's a bit too much. Let's do it to something like this. Let's just zoom in here a little bit for you, right? So we can see the particle glowing. It's got a grey background. So if we press F12, we still don't see it because the particle is kind of sitting up here out of the camera view, because I don't really want to see it in the camera view, which is fine. Let's go to the world settings, click on color here, and let's just set it to black. Now we can see this is glowing black. We can turn off our overlays just to see that more clearly. We'll turn back on the overlays, and now we just want to duplicate this particle and create other particles from it. So let's press Shift and D, then hit enter, and we'll drag this one across, and we can click on this particle, go to here, and then click on this number 2 here, just right here. We'll click on that, and that will create a new copied material for that. So we can call this left 2, right? So when we click on the drop down, we've got left 1 and left 2, but left 2 has the same color because we copied it. Let's just drag it to the side a bit more, and we're going to change its color. So change it to whatever you want. I'm going to make it might just stick with blue ones on this side, right? Maybe we do like 3 different colors of shades of blue. So we've got this blue color here. Let's click on this one, press Shift and D, and then hit enter. Let's just drag this down a bit. It's offline now. It doesn't really matter, to be fair. Let's just drag it to the side a little bit. We're just trying to group these 3 above this particle system here. That's what we're trying to do. It doesn't really matter where it sits, but as long as it's above, it doesn't even need to be above this one, to be fair, but just kind of makes sense. These 3 will be used by this particle system. So let's click on the number 2 here. That makes a copy. We'll call it number 3, left number 3, and we will go to the color. Let's make it a slightly darker blue. So we'll stick with blues on this side. Let's just grab all 3 of them, and maybe we just drag it to the side a bit more, and then we've got space for the ones in the center. And we need to name these, right? So let's copy this left 1, and let's call this one left 1. We'll call this one left 2, and then we'll call this one left 3. Now we want to group these particles into a collection. So let's call this left collection. So we're actually going to click down here in a blank space. We're going to right click and new collection here, and we're going to name this collection. Let's just rename it, double click rename. Let's call this left particles, right? And then we'll hold down the shift key, click on the first one, hold down the shift key, select all three of these and drag them into this particle collection. You know they're in there because when you minimize, they'll kind of get hidden like this. And now all three of these sit in this collection, which is what we want. What we want to do now is, I haven't really done this before, but it might be interesting if we should in theory just be able to right click on this, duplicate the collection. All right, so now we've got another copy. So if we hold down the shift key and select these three here, we should be able to drag them individually apart. So that just saves us a lot of time because we're just replicating the particle, these particles that sit inside this collection. You just right click on it and duplicate it. That's so much quicker than recreating all of these. And we can just name this one, rename it to middle particles. Let's just go all in and we'll call it middle 1, middle, let's see, which one is this one? That's middle 1, this is middle 2, and then this one will be middle 3, right? Middle 3. Okay, so let's click on middle 1. We want to change its color, but before we change it, we want to create a new material for it. So we're going to click here. In fact, you can just double click on middle 1, copy that name, then click here, then select everything in here and paste it so it's got its same name. And that's called middle 1, but we're going to change its color. I think we'll go for greens this time, right? So let's go for like quite a strong sort of yellowy green. And we'll click on this one. And we're going to click on this number 2, select in here, paste it, change it to middle 2, click on the color, change it to a different shade of green, maybe a slightly darker shade, and then click on the third one, and we'll click here, call it particle or middle 3, that's the name of the particle, and then we'll change it to a, let's try and get a lighter shade of green maybe. Let's go to, it's kind of darker on this side anyway, let's do like this sort of shade. So now we've got 3 different shades of green. This one here I might change it slightly to be a bit lighter. And you can pick whatever colors you want. So really we created these 3 and then we put them into a collection, then we duplicated that collection to create these 3 but rename them, the material, so we can change the colors of them. But they're grouped into collection, which is quite important. So now we can just click here to minimize this collection, right click on it and duplicate it one more time, duplicate collection. And this one is going to be called right particles. And this is going to be the first one. So hold down the shift key, select all 3 of these and drag them so they sit over the top, like around here, right? Somewhere like here. And we'll click on the first one. It's going to be called right 1. And then this one is going to be right 2. And this one will be called right 3. So just name them. It's going to be so much better for you later when you're looking at these and trying to understand what these objects are, what they're called. Let's click on the first one. We're going to click on here to make a copy, and then we'll click here and call it right 1, which is the name of it, right 1. And we'll change this to, we've used blue now, right? So maybe we'll go for like maybe like these purple, or maybe we'll go orange and sort of red colors, right? Let's start off with quite a dark red, or maybe we'll go to orange to red. So let's start off with like an orange, around quite a bright orange like this. We'll click on this one and we'll click here to make a copy. We'll call it right number 2, click here, and then we're going to make that like a darker orange, and then we'll click on the third one and we'll click here to make a copy. Let's paste it, call it right 3, right? So the name of the object and the material are named the same, and we'll make this like quite a strong red color, something like around here. And you pick whatever colors you like. It can be completely different colors. I just happen to be doing it this way. So now we've got a nice set of colors, and we've got collections of these colors, and now we can apply those collections to the particle systems, and then we can create other collections to control how these particles interact within their environment. Okay, so far we have these objects, three sets of them, and they're all grouped into separate collections, and we have three particle emitters, and we want to apply each one of these groups of particles to each separate particle system. So let's click on the first particle system, click on this one, it's called particle emitter left. We're going to scroll down and go to the render settings here, so click render settings, and inside here we've got halo, and we're going to set it to collection. And it would make sense that we've called this the left particle emitter, so we want to apply the left particle collection. So when we go down, instance of collection, and we're going to select left particles, right? And this one has 1,000 particles in it. Let's click on the middle one. Let's set that to 1,000. Could we change it to 100 just to test? Let's set it back to 1,000 for now. And this also has render settings, and it also set to halo as default, but we're going to set it to collection, and it's the middle one, right? It's called the middle emitter, so it would make sense that we apply the middle particle system. And we'll click on the last one. We'll set the number of particles in here to 1,000 as well, just like all the other ones, and we can change this. I'm going to show you that later. Let's go to particles, render as, collection, and it will make sense that this one is set to the right collection. Let's turn off our overlays. Let's click overlays here, turn them off, and now we can see the three particle systems. We can click play, and now we've got these nice colored particles of each color. Now you could have mixed them all together. You could have blues and greens mixed together. I kind of wanted to separate them just as a good demonstration of how this might work in Blender. We can press 0. 0 will take us into the camera view, so this is what the camera is seeing. Let's press F12, and now we can see the three particle systems generating particles, but they're all generating they're not generating them exactly the same, but they're generating the same amount of particles, right? But you can see there's some differences between the positions of the particles. Not each system will be identical. There will be differences in them. I believe so. In fact, let's see. Yeah, they're not exactly the same. So the particles will emit slightly differently from the surface of the object, right? But we can do some other things. So first of all, these particles are quite small. So if we click on the first one, and if we go to the render settings, we can scale them up a bit. So let's scale it up to around 0.15, right? So we want them to be a bit bigger, but I'm going to set the randomization all the way to the top. Now we've got particles in this system on this side. Some are large, some are small, some are tiny, because we added some randomization to it. Let's apply that same logic to the middle one. So let's click here. We'll set it to 0.15, and then we'll set the randomization all the way up. Do it for the third one. We'll set it to 0.15, and then set the randomization all the way up as well. Now if we go back and click play, we can see the particles being generated this way. Now these particle systems, they're all using the global, what is it called now? It's called the gravity. That's the word I'm looking for. I knew I'd get it in the end. Global gravity. So they're all falling at the same rate. They're all interacting in the same way. So we can now create other collections that will allow us to control things like gravity and certain other aspects of these particle systems separately. So let's go ahead and do one thing. Let's go ahead and let's just go back into solid view, so we can just see things in solid view, and let's turn back on our overlays, because that will help. We can see the floor, and what we want to do is create a floor. Let's press Shift and A, and we'll insert a plane. So here's a little plane. Let's press S to scale it, and let's scale that plane. See, this is going to cause a bit of problem. What's happening here is our plane is getting added to one of the collections. So we can you see how the plane is being replicated? So if we click play, it's actually going to generate planes now. We don't want that. So that's on this particular object, which is the right particle system. So if we go into the right particle system, we can see the plane is in here inside the collection. Let's drag it to the main collection up here. And when we add more objects to the system, we should click on this main collection. Then it will always add it to this collection. This is kind of like just a default collection where we can put other objects that don't get duplicated in our particle systems. So this plane, we want to call it floor, because it's going to be our floor. Let's click on the plane. Let's go to the physics properties, and let's set it to a collision. Right, we'll set it to collision. And then in theory, our particles will now bounce off of the floor, right? They're going to bounce off the floor. So when we go into our render view, they're going to hit this floor, basically, right? So if we pause it and then press F12 to render, we can see they're hitting the surface now. But that surface is, let's press number 0. 0 is our camera view. So we can see the little dotted line. If we click on the camera itself, it will be a bit more visible. And what we want to do is move this camera up, because we want the floor to be much closer to the bottom, right? We could zoom in, we could do quite a few different things to fix that, but let's just go to the property settings here. And what do we want? We want the z-axis, right? So we're going to move the camera up to around here. I think will be good. Let's think about this. Let's see, let's render it here, and our particles are getting emitted from here. Does that really matter? It shouldn't really matter. It would be nice if they're off the camera view, but I think it might look okay here as well. If we want them off the camera view, what we can do is let's get this floor right down to the bottom of the camera view first. So let's just drag it up a little bit more, so around here will be good. If we click on this floor and just give it does it really need a material? We can just make a material for it anyway. So let's go and click a material. We'll click on the floor, click material, make sure we're in render view, and then click new. And then I think what we'll do, let's set it to metallic. Let's bring down the roughness, and let's go to the render settings here, and let's turn on ambient inclusion, and let's turn on screen space reflections. Yeah, so now we can see the reflections in here on this black shiny material that we've created, right? And it might look pretty cool. We can change the position here, the max roughness. Let's see, I'll leave you to go and experiment with these settings, but you can change these settings to kind of, I want it to kind of be let's see, don't want it to be, let's turn off half trace. Half trace is rubbish. I think around here and bring down the roughness. Let's bring it right down. Maybe we'll run it like this. Let's press F12 and see. We might have to go back, click play. You can kind of see the reflections here on the floor now, right? So that kind of looks pretty cool. Optional. But let's go ahead and click back on here, click on the material, and we can adjust the roughness to bring it right down so that we don't see so much of the reflection. I just want it to be kind of subtle down there, right? So changing the roughness will give it more reflection or less reflection, basically. We want to bring it down so we can just about see there is those reflections. Something around here, maybe a bit less. I think around here will be pretty good. Let's see what it looks like. So I think that's okay. I think that looks pretty cool. Now we want to click on these three, so hold down the shift key and select all three of them, and we want to drag this so that it's sitting outside the camera view. In fact, let's do one thing. Let's click on all these three. Let's hold down the shift key and select we're going to do this wrong, aren't we? Let's do that again. So let's click on, in fact, let's click on all three of these particle systems. Let's see if we can move them first. I don't think we can move the collections as a group, right? It won't let us do that, which is a bit annoying. So let's press B to box. So we're going to press the letter B, and we're going to roll over these particles here to box select all of them and drag them up. It doesn't matter where they're positioned, so let's drag them quite high up like here, well out the camera view, right? We never want to really see these in our render view. Then we can go back, zoom in, click on these three. If you want to see them being emitted like in the camera view, then leave them where they are, but I want to drag them out of the camera view, like to here, somewhere around here. And I might just space them out a little bit more, so I'm going to hold down the control key and then drag this one maybe a couple to the side, click this one, hold down the control key and drag it a bit more to the side. Let's go back and click play. Now they're going to drop down, bounce off the floor, do their thing, and go to the render view. We can see they're spaced out a bit more. I think they needed to be, maybe that's a little bit too much. Let's bring it in one, let's click here, hold down the control key. I'm going to drag it in one on each side. This is down to you, this is your own preference, yeah? Whatever you want, you go for it. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's save this work, would be wise. Let's go to File, Save As, and let's make a version 2. And then I'm going to press Shift and A, and I'm going to go to Force Field, and I'm going to add turbulence. So here's some turbulence, and where is it in here? I think it's, let's see, it's probably got added to one of our collections again. Let's see. Wait, these are all saying 3 objects. Camera. Let's click on it. Where is it? Let's see. It should be in here somewhere. Here it is. It's in the left particle system. So let's drag that to the top collection. I keep forgetting to click this top collection before I add the turbulence. Right? It's called turbulence, which is good. And if we go to the physics settings and increase its strength, let's set it to like 3 for example, and then go back and click play, we should see a little bit of turbulence. We don't really see much. Let's increase that. Now we can see turbulence, right? So that's just kind of randomizing the particle's trajectory a little bit. But we can see this turbulence pushing the particles out. If I remove it, if I set it all the way down to almost nothing, they'll be falling straight down, directly down. So adding a bit of turbulence will increase how these particles fall. Now, the thing is, this turbulence is affecting all 3 of the particle systems. You can see that, right? All of them are inheriting this turbulence. We don't want that. We want turbulence to be, we want to try and control these all separately. So to do that, what we're going to do is create a new collection. We might create a collection within a collection. It doesn't really matter. So we can right click on this collection, create a new collection. So you right click on this one here, create a new one, and that collection will sit inside of this collection. And we're going to call this left. Let's call it 01 left fields, right? We're going to call it 01 left fields, and we're going to grab this turbulence and put it into here, and we're going to call this one left turbulence. So now we can click on this particle system, go down to the particle emitter here, and we can go to the field weights, and in reflector collection, effector collection, we can click here and select left particles. Right, no, not left particles. Where is it? 01 left fields. If we go back now and click play, let's see. Seems like all 3 of them are still being affected by that. It shouldn't do that. Let's save our work first. Go back, click play. So it still seems to be affecting all of them. Let's see. Shouldn't do that really. These ones should be straight and this one should only be affected. Let's just go to this left turbulence. Check inside here. This all seems fine. Let's increase it. Yeah, it's definitely affecting all 3, so it shouldn't affect all 3. Maybe, possibly because of where it's placed, the collection is placed inside of this group. So let's drag it out to the scene at the top here. Let's have it outside of the main collection, so it's sitting in its own little box here. Okay, I think we should try one thing quickly. Let's go ahead and replicate this these fields here, right? So the left field, just right click on it and duplicate this collection. So we want to rename this one now. Let's rename it to middle field weights, or middle fields, and then this one can be called the middle turbulence, right? And then we want one for the right side, so let's just right click, duplicate collection, and then we want to call this one right fields. And we'll call this right turbulence. Okay, so we should have a different collection a separate collection for each one of the fields, and we can add more fields in here like vortex and other things as well. But let's go ahead and click on the first particle system. Let's go down to the field weights and set it to left field. Let's go to this one and set it to the middle. Let's click on this one and set it to the right collection. So now each one has a separate collection. So in theory, if we click on the first one, and in here we've got the turbulence and how much effect. Let's just turn this all the way down. Let's click on the end one here, and we'll turn down the turbulence all the way down as well. Let's click back and let's click play. So now we can see these two are falling straight down, but this middle one isn't, right? So if we click on the middle one and click on its turbulence, let's go to the settings here. Let's increase it. Let's make it quite wide. Now you can see the difference. Now you can see two are falling straight down, and then this one is having a lot of turbulence, right? So we can affect the turbulence of this by either clicking on the particle system itself, going to the particle settings, and then changing the amount of effect in here in the turbulence as well. So we can affect the turbulence here. Now we can control all three turbulence across all three particle systems separately. So if we set this all the way back up to 100, well, let's set it to a sensible value, right? So let's expand the right one and then the left one. So the left one is set to, let's see, is set to 19, but the actual particle simulation, let's go to the simulation, we turned it off, right? So let's turn it back on. Let's go to the end one and turn this one back on. Now all of them have the particle turbulence, but they're all being controlled separately. Can you see? They're not all using the same. So what we could do is click on the middle one, click on the middle turbulence, and let's go to the physics here. Let's set this one to something like 20, right? So it's not so crazy. Let's go to the first one and go to the left turbulence, which is this one. This one's set close to 20 as well. So let's set this one to like 5. So the blue one has 5, this one has 20, and then this one over here, let's check it. Let's go to the right one, and this one's set close to 20. So let's set that to 5. Now they're being controlled separately, right? Each one has its own turbulence, and we can manipulate that turbulence in two ways. Either we can change the strength here. So we could set it to some minus value. Let's just see. That's like a minus value. Right, and this will be a positive value. So you can go and experiment with that now. But what's interesting is we can now, we can apply like a global turbulence that affects everything, or we can apply settings in here, field settings in here that only affect each individual one now. So we could, in theory, create a global force field. So we can click on the main collection here, press Shift and let's press Shift and A, and we can do let's do Shift and A would help. Force field, and we could do like a vortex, right? So we've got a vortex here. If we click play, this vortex in theory should affect all three of them. So if we click on it and go to, should in theory and increase the strength of it. Let's see. So it doesn't seem to affect them. So I think when the particle systems have a collection of their own applied, then this vortex that sits outside the collection won't affect it. So if we were to drag this vortex into the left one, into the left fields here, it should affect it in theory. Let's just go back and let's pause this. Sometimes we need to save our work first, so let's save it. So don't see, let's see. Okay, it's doing something. It's going a bit crazy. It's too strong. Let's set it to like a value of like 6 here. 1.6. So now this particle system is wrapping around the vortex, right? because it's sitting inside of the left fields here for this one. So if we were to drag that into the middle, or we could duplicate it and make a copy, and we could reverse that logic. So what we could do is right click on this. Let's see. In fact, what we can do is click on the vortex. Let's pause this a second. So this is a vortex here. We can press Shift and D to duplicate it. Now we've got two vortex, right? But let's just drag this one to the right collection down here. So it's on the right hand side. Let's just get rid of this here. We should really call it right vortex, you know. I like to be correct. And this one should really be called left, just to make it easier to understand. And if we set this to a minus value, minus 1.6, and then press Ctrl S to save, in theory this one should wrap around the other way. So let's see, now it's wrapping around the other way, you see? Because we set it to a minus value. Now these particle systems are not living long enough for them to sort of reach to the bottom or wrap all the way around. So we could click on the left one, go to the particle system and set the lifetime to like 100. So now this particle system on the left hand side will live a lot longer, and it will have more time to do its journey, right, along that trajectory. And we could do the same for the right hand side one. If we can find it, here it is. We can set that to 100. And then once it loops back around, that one should manage to get quite far down into here, like we can see, right? And now we can do something with the middle one. The middle one could be a vortex, or we could add other field weights individually, specifically in here. And we can change everything, right? The vortex, the turbulence, some can have turbulence, some don't have to have it. Now you can see how these collections can be kind of, or group of fields can be grouped into collections, and then those collections can be applied to the particle system. You can control them all separately. It's quite an interesting way to work in Blender. Another thing we could do, let's have a look. Let's click on the left collection. In fact, let's click on the middle one. The middle one's kind of sitting by itself. It's only got one field in there. So let's press Shift A, and we could add we've got turbulence, we've got vortex. We could add a wind object, right? So we can take a wind object, and let's go ahead and let's call this middle wind, MI middle wind, and let's go to the settings here. Let's increase its strength, and now let's decrease it a bit. Now the wind is pushing in the upwards direction, so it's stopping these particles from falling all the way down, right? But in theory, we could rotate the wind and push it so that it's facing towards the camera. So we could middle mouse click. Right now this is pointing upwards. So if we pause it, we can see the yellow arrow is pointing upwards. So if we go to here, and if we rotate it on the red line, which will be the what would that be, X, right? X axis. We can, this is location, that's the wrong one. We want to rotate on the X axis towards the camera. Let's just set X to 90. Now that wind object, if we press 0, the wind object is pushing these particles towards the camera. Let's see. It should get pushed towards the camera. They should, you can see it from this direction. They're getting pushed towards the camera. You see how the green one's moving like this direction. So in theory, we could click on the middle emitter, go to the particle system and set the lifetime to like 150, so it has more time to travel. And now you can see the particles getting pushed. Let's turn off the overlays, and these particles are bouncing towards the camera, right? Even bouncing off of the camera view, you can see them falling off of the floor in front of us. They're actually falling off here. They're getting pushed off the edge here. Can you see? Falling off. So that is quite interesting, isn't it? And you can add other fields. This is a good way to experiment with fields and understand how they work and what they're doing. It's quite interesting to experiment with Blender in this way with particle systems. So let's pause it here. Let's press F12, and then we can see that everything is rendering out as we expect it to render. There are some other fields that we could add, like let's go to the middle field weights. I think the middle one's a good one to add it to. In Blender, there's no way to create like a global field that we could apply to everything. You can't really do that. So either don't create collections, or you can remove the you could in theory remove the let's see, click on the particle system, go to the particle settings. You could remove the effector collection here. You could remove it, and then you could create global ones and then use those to control everything. But you can't control them separately. The whole idea here is that we can click on this one, go to each one of the turbulence, the vortex, and change those specifically for this particle system on the left hand side, right? Change it specifically for that one. So we could click on the vortex. Let's go over to here. It's set to 1.6. So let's set it to like 2.6. So in theory, the vortex should be a lot stronger on the left hand side. Can you see how it's different now? Right, the left hand side one is a lot stronger compared to the right hand side one, because the right one is minus 1.6 here. So let's try one thing. Let's go to the middle collection quickly, and let's press Shift and A, and I want to insert a Leonard Jones. I want to drag that towards the center, a bit up here, and let's go to the physics settings here. Let's give it a strength of like 50, quite high. And let's see. Let's go ahead and just hide these two particle systems, because it's quite interesting to see each individual particle system working by itself. So if you just want to see the green middle section or the green particle system by itself and see how it's interacting with the different force fields, then you can just hide them from here. So you can take the blue one, you can see that one working by itself, and then you can also take the red one and see that one. You can, render these out separately as well if you wanted to. It's just an interesting way to see the particle systems. You can work with each one individually and then combine all three of them together to see how everything's working in sequence. So that's kind of just a basic overview of particle system. Obviously there's a lot more you can do with the particle system in Blender, but I thought this will be an interesting tutorial, especially because we're working with 3 different systems and each one has its own set of vortexes or set of fields that we can manipulate separately across all 3 particle systems. So I think this is quite an interesting tutorial, something maybe a bit different to work with. So I'll leave you to go and experiment with this. Don't forget to you click on these particle systems, go into the settings in here and experiment with these settings. Learn a lot by experimenting. One thing though is if you want to render this out, if I press F12, you'll probably see everything okay in here, but make sure that you click on one of the particle systems. So click on any one of them, go to the particle systems, and then make sure you bake all dynamics. When you click bake all dynamics, you should see this red line here, and then you can scrub through this quite fast, and it should place the particles exactly where you want them. If you make a change, you have to delete the bake here, delete all bakes, delete bake here, or just delete all bakes, delete all bakes. That way you can make a change, and then when you rebake, that change will be reflected in your render. So I'll leave you to go and experiment with that. Quite a fun tutorial, something a bit different in this Blender tutorial. Go and experiment with that, have fun with it. That's multiple particle systems using multiple fields and collections in Blender 2.93. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's minimize this. We'll close this down. Okay, hopefully you found this tutorial useful, and if you've got any questions about particle systems, feel free to comment in the YouTube commenting. By no means am I a Blender expert. I build websites for a living. Blender's just a bit of fun on the side, but I've got a bit of knowledge, and if I can help you, I shall do so. Okay, that's the end of this tutorial. Hopefully you find it useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next DCP Word tutorial.